Chapter 3. Midwich rests. From 10:17 that night, information about Midwich becomes episodic. Its telephones remained dead. The bus that should have passed through it failed to reach Stouch, and a truck that went to look for the bus did not return. A notification from the RAF was received in train of some unidentified flying object, not, repeat, not, a service machine, detected by radar in the Midwich area, possibly making a forced landing. Someone in Opley reported a house on fire in Midwich, with apparently nothing being done about it. The train fire appliance turned out and thereafter failed to make any reports. The train police dispatched a car to find out what had happened to the fire engine, and that too vanished into silence. Opley reported a second fire, and still seemingly nothing being done. Constable Gobby in Stouch was rung up and sent off on his bicycle to Midwich, and no more was heard of him, either. The dawn of the 27th was an affair of slatternly rags, soaking in a dishwater sky, with a grey light weakly filtering through. Nevertheless, in Opley and in Stouch, cocks crowed and other birds welcomed it more melodiously. In Midwich, however, no birds sang. In Opley and Stouch, too, as in other places, hands were soon reaching out to silence alarm clocks, but in Midwich the clocks rattled on till they ran down. In other villages, sleepy-eyed men left their cottages and encountered their workmates with sleepy good mornings. In Midwich, no one encountered anyone. For Midwich lay entranced. While the rest of the world began to fill the day with clamour, Midwich slept on. Its men and women, its horses, cows and sheep, its pigs, its poultry, its larks, moles and mice all lay still. There was a pocket of silence in Midwich, broken only by the fruing of the leaves, the chiming of the church clock, and the gurgle of the opal as it slid over the weir beside the mill. And while the dawn was still a poor, weak thing, an olive-green van with the words Post Office Telephones just discernible upon it, set out from train with the object of putting the rest of the world into touch with Midwich again. In Stouch it paused at the village call-box to inquire whether Midwich had yet shown any signs of life. Midwich had not. It was still as deeply incommunicado as it had been since 22:17 hours. The van restarted and rattled on through the uncertainly gathering daylight. "Cor," said the lineman to his driver companion, "Cor, that there Miss Ogle ain't half going to cop herself a basinful of Her Majesty's displeasure over this little lot." "I don't get it," complained the driver. "If you'd asked me, I'd said the old girl was always listening when there was anyone on the blower, day or night. Just goes to show," he added vaguely. A little out of Stouch, the van swung sharply to the right and bounced along the by-road to Midwich for half a mile or so. Then it rounded a corner to encounter a situation which called for all the driver's presence of mind. He had a sudden view of a fire engine, half heeled over, with its near-side wheels in the ditch, and a black saloon car which had climbed halfway up the bank on the other side a few yards further on, with a man on a bicycle lying half in the ditch behind it. He pulled hard over, attempting an S-turn which would avoid both vehicles, but before he could complete it, his own van ran onto the narrow verge, bumped along for a few more yards, then ploughed to a stop, with its side in the hedge. Half an hour later, the first bus of the day, proceeding at a light-hearted speed, since it never had a passenger before it picked up the Midwich children for school in Opley, rattled round the same corner to jam itself neatly into the gap between fire engine and the van, and block the road completely. On Midwich's other road, that connecting it with Opley, a similar tangle of vehicles gave at first sight the impression that the highway had, overnight, become a dump. And on that side the mail van was the first vehicle to stop without becoming involved. One of its occupants got out and walked forward to investigate the disorder. He was just approaching the rear of the stationary bus when, without any warning, he quietly folded up and dropped to the ground. The driver's jaw fell open, and he stared. Then, looking beyond his fallen companion, he saw the heads of some of the bus passengers, all quite motionless. He reversed hastily, turned, and made for Opley and the nearest telephone. Meanwhile, a similar state of affairs on the Stouch side had been discovered by the driver of a baker's van, and 20 minutes later almost identical action was taking place on both the approaches to Midwich. Ambulances swept up with something of the air of mechanized Galahads. Their rear doors opened. Uniformed men emerged, fastened their tunic buttons, and providently pinching the embers from half-smoked cigarettes. They surveyed the pile-ups in a knowledgeable, confidence-inspiring way, unrolled stretchers, and prepared to advance. On the Opley Road, the two leading bearers approached the prone postman competently, but then, as the one in the lead drew level with the body, he wilted, sagged, and subsided across the last casualty's legs. The hind bearer goggled. Out of a babble behind him, his ears picked up the words, "Gas!" He dropped the stretcher handles as if they had turned hot, and stepped hastily back. There was a pause for consultation. Presently the ambulance driver delivered a verdict, shaking his head. "Not our kind of job," he said, with the air of one recalling a useful union decision. "More like the fire chap's pigeon, I'd say." "The armies, I reckon," said the bearer. "Gas masks, not just smoke masks, is what's wanted here."
Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to hear more great stories.